Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome back to my channel Think Big, Learn Smart. Hello everyone. I hope you all are having a wonderful time. So I'm back with another video, and the topic of my video is World Bank. And just like my all the videos, I am going to discuss about the World Bank and its various aspects. So what we will be talking about are its history. We will talk about its objectives, functions, why it was formed, and how it works. What are the criticisms that are mostly on the World Bank, and what is the future of World Bank. So without further ado, let's start this video. So the first thing we are going to talk about is about the introduction of World Bank. So World Bank is an international financial institution, just like the IMF that I discussed in my earlier video, that provides financial and technical assistance to developing countries for development programs. So from that general definition, you would be like that, what is the difference between IMF and the World Bank? So the main difference between the IMF and World Bank is of the perspective. The IMF looks in the perspective of countries, while the World Bank looks them in terms of projects and programs. So that's the difference between the perspective that is in between the World Bank and the IMF. So it comprises of the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, IBRD, and the International Development Association. These two are the most important organs of the World Bank, and its headquarters is in Washington DC and have more than 100 offices in countries. So it was established in 1944 during the conference of 44 countries in Bretton Woods, and we discussed about the Bretton Woods conference that also formed the United Nations and the IMF as well as the World Bank. It was the event that changed the history from that point. So it is the member of the World Bank Group. The World Bank Group consists of 5 institutions: IBRD, IDA, ICISDA. These all are the institutions of the World Bank. They all are financial institutions. And the main goal of the World Bank is to reduce poverty in the globe and improve the living standard of the people. So let's move on. So why it was formed? What was the reason behind the formation of World Bank? Well, I've listed the few important reasons. And the main reason for the formation of World Bank was the World War II destruction. And the World War II destroyed the Europe and the Asian countries as well. So it was a devastating effect, and the only economy that was in strong terms was of the United States of America. So the Bretton Woods conference happened, and the World Bank, IMF, and United Nations was formed to strengthen these war-torn nations so that they can develop and regain their strength. The bank is successful in providing financing for these devastated, destroyed countries. But with the passage of time, the World Bank's perspective changed, and as the European countries and the Asian countries that were destroyed in the World War regained their strength, the World Bank changed its perspective and changed its goal towards reducing the poverty in the world in a general terms. So Harry Dexter White and John Maynard Keynes conceptualized an international institution to stabilize exchange rates and provide a source of financing for reconstruction and development among countries ravaged by the war. So the World Bank was the concept of these two revolutionary thinkers. So Harry Dexter White was the US Treasury senior official, and John Maynard Keynes needs no introduction as he is the most famous economist, British economist to be honest. So how World Bank works? The IBRD is the most important organ of the World Bank that is responsible for the reconstruction of post-World War Europe, and that part ended with the passage of time, and before gaining membership to the World Bank Group, a country must be a member of IBRD, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. It offers loan to the poorest countries in the world that offers 10 years of grace period and hold maturity of 35 to 40 years. So what is the grace period? Grace period is basically a time period after loan, like the due date of some loan is after 5 years, and the 10 years grace period is basically the time period after the due date, and it is a time when it is a grace period time, means there is no penalty in that time. A nation can pay its debt in this time period as well. So what are the objectives of the World Bank? I have listed the most important objectives. One of the most important objective is to provide long run capital to the member countries for economic reconstruction and development. That is the most important objective of the World Bank, and to induce capital investment for ensuring balance of payment. And this is the objective that is also the objective of IMF as well. But in the World Bank, it is in the terms of projects and reconstruction programs to ensure the implementation of development projects so as to bring about smooth transfer from wartime to peace economy, and that objective ended with the passage of time. To promote capital investment in the member countries, that is the most important objective that is relevant in today's times, as the developing countries need these investments to stabilize their economies. If private capital is not available, even after providing guarantee, then it provides loans for productive activities on considerate conditions. It also provides loans as well to provide guarantee on private loans or capital investment. So these are the few objectives of the World Bank. Now we will talk about the functions of the World Bank. Its functions are granting development loans to the developing countries, provide loans to the government for agriculture, irrigation projects, transport projects, water supply projects, education, health. These are the basic programs for which the World Bank provides loans. It provides loans to private concerns for specified projects. So it is not just limited to the countries, but it also provides loans to private industries, provide technical and monetary advice to member countries for specific projects. That's another function of the World Bank, encouraging industrial development of underdeveloped countries by promoting economic reforms, as we saw in the earlier slide, that it provide those loans for the development of poor nations. So what are the criticisms that are done on the World Bank? The few of the criticisms I have listed are of that globalization promoted by the World Bank spreads greater inequality, which is in turn bad for poor countries. What happens is that industrialized nations uses poor countries as their host for the production, and they are basically destroying their environment, their people and their land, and using them for their own benefit. So that is promoting inequality. The wealth is basically flowing from the poor countries to the wealthy nations, and it is making them more wealthy and making them more dependent on those industrialized nations. So it is wrong in its perception that economic growth will solve all the problems. Economic growth is not the only solution for the problems. There are a lot of other things that are going on that needs to be solved, as there can be another criticism on the World Bank that it plays as a hand for developed nations to control the underdeveloped countries. So it has been observed quite often that developing countries put health, education and social programs on hold in order to pay back their loans, as they have to do that because there are no other resources they can manage to pay back their loans. And what happens is that these institutions are forcing them to pay back their loans. So what they do is that they cut off their budgets of health, education, and all the social programs. So it hurts them really, really badly. Emphasis on the increase of exports have disastrous impact on environment that I discussed in the globalization criticism as well. Free market is pushed on third world countries, so it is basically spreading the ideology of globalization and free market economy on the third world countries, and that is unfair as the industrialized countries didn't go through that period to get industrialized. So these were the few criticisms on the World Bank. Now let's move on to the future of the World Bank. So what is the current mission of the World Bank? It is to end the extreme poverty within a generation and boost shared prosperity. It is undoubtedly an important mission, but it has to be reframed in another way so that it can be inclusive and good for the underdeveloped countries. Such an approach would reflect to reinforce recently adopted sustainable development goals that are unanimously agreed by all the institutions like United Nations and all the countries in the world, so that they can make the world better in the 2030. To succeed, the bank must broaden its toolkit beyond country specific loans. For this, it needs to a clear mandate from member countries as well as instruments of financial and technical assistance that are geared toward the provision of development relevant global public goods. So it has to broaden its own concept of working as well. So that are a few suggestions for the future of the World Bank. So that was all about this topic. Thank you very much for listening. Allah Hafiz. Take care of yourself.